Hello, my name is Troy Roach. I am a citizen scientist, a long COVID patient turned researcher, researching nicotine patches. And we're interviewing a few people who have experience using nicotine patches, mostly good experiences so far, which is good. I'm inviting Kira Hagen or Hagen.
Yeah, Hagen.
Hagen, Kira Hagen, to share her experience because she was one of the earliest adopters of using nicotine patches after Dr. Litsky's paper came out, and she had a positive experience and was sharing it widely on Twitter and I guess other social media sites
No,
as well.
mostly
Most,
just Twitter.
mostly just Twitter. Okay. So first, maybe introduce yourself, like your name, your hobby,
Okay.
about
Uh,
you.
I'm Kira Hagen. I'm an American in Germany, and I uh, have been working in event and portrait photography. I used to teach English. I wrote a novel called Strangeling during lockdown, and but mostly I'm a photographer. And I had long COVID from about, well, it started in March 2022 and cleared up around it started clearing up in March 2023. Um, and I have been mostly in the clear, except I keep getting reinfected because I have a child in grade school. And patches have been absolutely the deciding thing in that, in keeping me at least mostly healthy most of the time.
Yeah. So I think you hold the record for the person who has probably recovered from long COVID with nicotine patches the most, from what I've heard.
Oh, yeah, there's a distinction.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I guess I guess it's a positive thing, if it
it
still
makes
works.
such a difference knowing that there is something that works for me. I'm
Mhm.
not going to be okay all the time, but I can get back to mostly okay. Um, the worst part of long COVID was wondering if it was forever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But also, like you mentioned before on Twitter that for the most part, you've gotten back to your normal life and uh,
um,
taking your kids to
Mostly, I
school.
have to pace a bit more than I used to. I am also, in my mid 40s, so
Mm.
things are probably slowing down a little anyway. But yeah, most of the pacing I have to do is asthma management because COVID left me quite asthmatic.
Mm.
Um, and then, whatever other symptoms I get from the random infections my kid brings home.
Mhm.
Um, like right now, my knees have been swollen for the last week and a half,
Mm.
and I've got patches behind both of them. Actually, this is one of those you're not supposed to do it things, but I've taken a lot of nicotine patches in the last year and a half, so I just cut one in half and stuck half between each knee, on each knee.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can deal with it. It doesn't make me shaky or nauseous anymore.
Yeah. What type of dose are you using now
Oh,
or?
I've always just used the 7 milligram patches. I've never
Mm.
used higher. I mostly take 7 milligram nickel Fresnel patches. I think I went with that brand because it was the cheapest one on Amazon Germany,
Mhm. Okay.
and it works fine. So no
Mhm.
complaints. I'm happy to keep using them.
People are always asking what brand should I use, but in each country there are different brands, and
Mhm.
so there's not like one universal brand.
Nope.
Yeah.
But it mostly doesn't make my skin itch, and I haven't had any unusual side effects from them.
Mhm.
The first week I was on them, it was quite unpleasant. I spent a fair bit of time trying not to throw up and
Mhm.
feeling um, much like back in my pub and club going days when there was no smoking bans, and I'd come home and my clothes would smell so much I'd just hang them on the balcony because it was too stinky to have in the house. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was teaching English in Moscow for about 9 years, and they liked their smoky clubs. So I've never been a smoker. I'm actually allergic to some brands of cigarettes, some additive in them. And my grandfather was a chain smoker, and I do not like cigarettes very
Yeah.
much at all.
Yeah. I grew up with parents that smoke and always hated cigarettes. So the idea
Yeah,
of trying to use nicotine to help me, it took a lot of research to convince myself to do it. I assume you
yeah.
had to do some research as well.
Well, like I told you earlier, I partially tried patches out of spite. Um, a friend of my husband's was horrified that I was trying to cure my long COVID. And I'd been housebound about 6 months at this point. No, more than that, about 8 months I'd been housebound. And I was asking this friend of my husband's, he's a teacher at the same school, and he was like, as a gym teacher, physiotherapy, very health conscious background, and he works out and does all the gym stuff, and kind of a jock. So I was asking him about smartwatches for pacing, and he was just horrified that I was trying to cure myself. I'm like, my doctor's given me an asthma inhaler and ibuprofen, and that's it. I've been stuck home for 8 months. What am I supposed to do? And I thought, well, you know what? Just out of spite, I'm going to try the weirdest thing that Twitter throws up as a long COVID cure next, which happened to be nicotine patches. They weren't too expensive and easily available. And so I went for it and I documented it. I just kept writing on Twitter what my experience with it was. Um, and they worked. I did a week on patches, or it was 8 days because I accidentally, before I knew you're not supposed to do it, I cut the first patch in half and used that the first 2 days, which probably gave me a quite high dose. I was very nauseous or nauseated, and I had to take charcoal tablets that, they're like travel medicine for upset stomachs.
Yeah.
And that probably helped clear things a bit on its own. I highly recommend charcoal tablets the first week. And I was also taking nattokinase and some probiotic vitamins and vitamin C or stuff like that. Like when you've got long COVID, you're trying every pill under the sun. So I did my week on patches, and my baseline before that, and this is unfortunately not a very scientific baseline, but I could walk to my kids' school and back, which was about 500 meters. And I needed to sit down each direction halfway through. And I think it was about 10 days after I started patches. He had like some kind of, or like an evaluation for ADHD that he had to get to, and there was a transit strike. Because of course there's a transit strike. And I was like, I'm feeling better. I think we can do this. And so we walked, and it was 4 kilometers round trip. And at the end of it, and I was able to do it. I was shocked, because that was so much farther than I could normally walk. And I started to feel some of that POTS PEM feeling coming on at the end. So I just slapped on another patch. And then for the next few months, anytime I was going to exert myself, be in public, or did something that made me start to feel the POTS or PEM feeling, I put on another patch. And by June, I was biking 14 kilometers again. So like I started early March, and recovery to being able to be low end normal was going pretty well by mid-June. Then I went back to the States for the summer to visit family, and Canada was burning down and we had all the smoke. So I was like month and a half of asthma attacks and I made no significant progress with that going on.
Yeah.
But
Bad luck.
yeah, by October, early October. I went not intense mountain biking, but muddy forest biking anyway, on a
Mhm.
regular bike, and did, I think it was 23 kilometers. Um,
Mhm.
and the only problem I was having was asthma. So I was getting back to normal, and then my kid brought home 4 COVID infections over the course of the winter, or the school year rather. So
Mhm.
I've used patches every time, because every time I've started going back into the long COVID space with the exhaustion and sometimes the racing heart and joint problems currently. But I take nattokinase and nicotine patches, and eventually it gets better.
It's good that it's working, and hopefully something will change and there'll be
And
fewer
I've got an
instances.
e-bike now, so that helps a lot.
Oh,
Strongly
yeah.
recommend an e-bike to anyone in recovery because
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. You can get around and it feels good. The sense of
so
movement.
it's more an issue of I know I can get home,
Mm-hmm.
because before I had the e-bike, I would worry that I'd have an asthma attack, or start going into the PEM space where like everything's exhausting, or I'm too dizzy to stay on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
And now I got an e-bike. It's full size, but it folds in the middle, so I can take it on the train for free with a regular ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm out and I have problems, either the pedal assist will get me home, or I'll get on the train and come home.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay. That's good.
because before I wouldn't go out. If I thought, oh, it's risky, I wouldn't try.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get like when you're in recovery, not when you're in long COVID, but when you're recovering, you've got to get your body moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me, biking is my favorite thing. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Movement is important for healing because the lymphatic system
Yeah,
doesn't have a pump like the heart does.
right.
So
Exactly.
it needs movement.
And for myself, I had fatty liver disease between like 2017 and 2019, um, and had to lose about 10% of my body weight. And that came back, or the body weight came back, and a bit of the fatty liver when I was immobilized, because
Mhm.
I wasn't burning any calories. So I had to do this, like, I've got to lose weight, but I can't exercise too much. And
Mm.
I can't change my diet that much, because being disabled meant we were on one income in Germany,
Mhm.
and that's not fun. It
No.
means cheap food and
Mm.
lots of carbs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, income definitely affects health
Oh
through
yeah.
diet in huge ways
Mhm.
that I'm aware of. And I know from personal experience. So for the nicotine patches, for people who are new to them, what do you suggest them to do?
It does seem like you need probably a week of patches per year that you've had long COVID at the
Mm.
beginning. Um, so I'd had it for less than a year. I did a week of patches, and then just whenever POTS or PEM seemed likely. And I was mostly off patches within 6 months, didn't need them anymore. I always took it with nattokinase. Nattokinase helps dissolve the spike protein
Mm.
in the COVID molecules. And I think they just work together really well, because you've got two different attacks on the COVID molecule,
Mm.
the particulate matter, with nicotine denying it the receptor space on your cells, and nattokinase kind of blunting its ability to get into your cells in the first place.
Yeah.
Um,
But to be clear, actually, we suggest that people don't try more than one new thing at a time.
oh, yeah,
So
that's
if
a good
they're
idea.
if they're already
Yeah.
taking 20 other supplements and they're used to them,
Yeah.
then that's fine. But we just don't want
Mhm.
people trying multiple new things at the same time so that they start the
Right.
nicotine patch.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then they don't know what to blame for the side
Mhm.
effects or the benefits or
Yeah.
or
No,
anything.
I agree completely with that. And
Yeah.
I had been on nattokinase for 3 or 4 months
Yeah.
when I started nicotine patches. And I had plateaued. Like, I had a lot of initial improvement,
Hmm.
but it never really took care of the reservoir infection.
Hmm.
Um, I actually had to, like, before I really got into anything that was working for me. No, actually, I think I was already on nattokinase, but I'd plateaued. Um, I made a list of what I thought it would take to um, recover from long COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And it was get inflammation under control, get oxygen back into the body. Because I
Mm-hmm.
really think a lot of the long COVID symptoms are oxygen deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kill the reservoir infections and then deal with damage done. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Now, kill the reservoir infections, oxygenate the body, and deal with inflammation, get inflammation down. Those are kind of all three simultaneous ones,
Mm-hmm.
but they're distinct enough that they're worth mentioning.
Yeah.
They all have to be done.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, each person is different. They probably have to do multiple things. And
yeah,
I personally also recommend people take nattokinase as
yeah.
well. And now I also recommend people to take supplements with tannins
Okay,
because there's research into supplements. One is called OPC, which
okay.
is grape seed extract or something.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, tannins help
I drink massive amounts of tea.
antiviral inside the bloodstream. So,
Okay, I drink massive amounts of black tea,
mhm,
3 to 7 cups a day. So I probably get some good tannins in there from that.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there are multiple things that can be done. It's just make sure that people
Yeah.
just try one thing, one new thing at a time, and when they know how it affects them, then
Oh
try
yeah, absolutely
something
agree with
else.
that.
Yeah. But
Uh,
how did the nicotine patch affect you personally? Did you see benefits in the first day, or did you?
oh no, the first week was miserable.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the first 3 days, I just felt like I'd been out at a really grotty pub, like, can't see the other side of the building. It's so smoky,
Hmm.
um, which has always left me feeling kind of wired and, you know, gross. And then around day 4, I started fighting, throwing up quite like actively. That's when I started taking charcoal because
Hmm.
I was gonna be like praying to the porcelain goddess all week if if I didn't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my first week was quite miserable.
Mm.
Like at the same time I was feeling awful, I was also getting a little more energy. So I was like, I was gonna do the protocol as the people in the study did it,
Mm.
regardless. That I was gonna do a full week, even if I was miserable.
Yeah.
Um, but I could feel that I was getting more energy. So,
Mhm.
and then that just kept going.
Yeah.
Um, and quite a number of times I thought I could have stalled out if I didn't have patches because I'd overdo it a bit. Um,
Mhm.
it's so easy to overdo it a bit and go back into PEM, post-exertional malaise. I have no scientific evidence to back this, just my own personal experience. But I really think PEM is when the virus in your reservoir infections goes into overdrive for replication.
Because healing takes so much energy that
Yeah.
even if it was a healing effect, it's still gonna wipe you
Mhm.
out. So
Yeah, I usually, when I'm going to do something big, I still usually try and block it out so I don't have much going on the next day, just in
mhm.
case, because I often do need a little recovery time. Um, I'm still having asthma problems.
Mhm.
Uh, and like many people, my body's much more temperature sensitive now, especially for
Mhm.
hot weather. Like I get heat exhaustion so easily
Mhm.
these days, way easier than I used to.
Yeah.
And my husband says the same, and he's had COVID twice, I believe. And he bike commutes like 25 kilometers a day. Um,
Mhm.
so he complained that it slowed him down. Like his maximum speed is 5 kilometers slow, 5 kilometers an hour slower than it used to be. But he also used to drive like an insane maniac. So
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in terms of him running people over. Um, Oh, and another thing I haven't seen mentioned about nicotine a lot is that it helped my POTS quite a lot. Like people will say, um, nicotine, it's dubious if you've got POTS,
Mhm,
but as I understand it, POTS is mostly um, your veins and arteries get floppy because COVID screws up the muscles that squeeze them. It's
mhm,
not just your heart
mhm,
squeezing, like all your veins and arteries also do a bit of squeezing and pumping to move the blood through your body. And COVID messes that up. But nicotine is a vasoconstrictor, which
mhm,
means it constricts your veins and pulls them kind of back into shape.
mhm,
And do that for a bit. And it seems like the little muscles or whatever the pumping mechanism is starts working again.
mhm. Well, actually, for the vasoconstriction, there's kind
Mhm.
of a misunderstanding, I think, because nicotine in the main arteries and like to the brain and everything, it's actually a
Mhm.
vasodilator.
Okay.
So it actually increases the blood flow to the brain and to the
Hmm.
main organs. But then I think for the smaller peripheral, like to the skin, then it's more
Okay.
like a vasodilator because the body compensates somehow. Because like if there's more blood flowing in the big pipes, then the small pipes have to compensate by
Oh, yeah, that makes
changing.
sense.
So
Anyways,
yeah,
it does something to your vascular system. It helped me.
yeah. I personally think that POTS is probably mostly neurological in people, like a neurological inflammation that affects the signaling
Okay.
between the autonomic nervous system and the muscles around the veins and everything. So um, so that's maybe why some people have like such quick recoveries from POTS. If they fix that one signaling problem,
Yeah,
then they
because my
feel
POTS went
great.
away faster than any. It went away quite quickly when I started nicotine patches. Like
Mhm.
within a couple months, it wasn't an issue. I was biking again.
Yeah, that's good. Well,
Uh,
that's great. So, also, I wanted to ask you about binders because I personally don't usually recommend people to use binders because I found that most people, if they're using binders, it was a sign that the dose was probably too high for them, and that
mm.
they needed just to lower the dose. But I mean, um, do you
I
do you
only
think?
needed charcoal tablets like 4 or 5 days.
Mhm.
So it wasn't something I was taking long term.
Okay.
And I'm talking like 1 or 2 tablets a day
Mhm.
at that point. And I don't think they're like special activated charcoal. It's like
Mhm.
€3 for a box of them.
Mhm.
It's travel medicine for food poisoning while you're traveling. And, I taught English in Russia for years. And anytime somebody gets an upset stomach there, they
Mhm.
give you charcoal, which incidentally is treatment for alcohol poisoning. So that kind of says something right there. So,
Yeah.
um, but
That's
yeah, I didn't take it long term. Just when I thought I'd throw up if I didn't.
so you used it more for the symptoms of the
Yeah,
nicotine
yeah.
and not, or whatever was happening with the nicotine, but not necessarily because it was removing the virus or something.
No, I just used it. I mean, I hope it also did that.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't hurt that. It had charcoal in the travel medicine kit, so I took some when my stomach got upset. I do think that there is something to be said about how demonized tobacco has been, or nicotine has been. The Native Americans used it as a sacred herb for a long time. It was good medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something in there,
Yeah.
you know, to respect these things that we have demonized or made demonic with the tobacco companies. I
Yeah.
don't know, this should not be, substances like this shouldn't be abused to the point that they kill people.
Yeah. But the biggest problem is that people connect nicotine to cigarettes,
Yeah.
and they're cigarettes have 7,000 chemicals
Mhm.
in them.
Well, and just any smoke, like cooking smoke is a carcinogen.
Yeah,
Through most of human history, one of the biggest causes of death is having an open fire in your kitchen
yeah.
over time, because that char just accumulates in your lung.
Hmm.
And that's not specific to nicotine or to tobacco smoke. That is just smoke.
Hmm.
Smoke in your lungs is not good for you long term.
And also like people worry about addiction. So like, do you wake up in the mornings having cravings for nicotine
No.
patches?
I have never wanted to put on a nicotine patch except when my body was going, we feel the long COVID stuff, get a patch on.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
So you take it like an aspirin for a headache, not
yeah, pretty much. Like,
never
I
got
will
any
have some
addiction.
kind of symptom before I want to put a patch on.
Yeah.
Um, and most of the time I don't wear them. Like if I'm feeling okay and I'm out of the long COVID space, which happens in, month-long blocks or so,
Mhm.
I don't put a patch on more than once a week. I've never gotten any kind of like, oh, I need my rush, because there's no rush,
Yeah.
Um, I do have some days where like I'm still fighting some of the neurological brain effects. It's still difficult to write and still frustrating that in like the 2 years leading up to getting long COVID, I wrote like 500,000 words getting a novel and the sequels written down, and then I couldn't write at all while I
Mhm.
was sick. And um, there was times where you've probably experienced this, many people have, where I would go looking for a word and I just couldn't find it. I would just like stutter out for like 10 seconds, maybe more, just trying to find a single word. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I found that being in a multilingual environment, like we both have lived in multiple
yeah.
countries and different languages, that kind of also, I think it makes it more complicated sometimes because
Yeah.
you just kind
Well,
of
I had
stop using different vocabulary.
a colleague, volunteer at an organization I do photography for, who also got long COVID, and he actually made it into the long COVID clinic system here,
Mhm.
which did not seem to be helping him very much. And we chatted about 2 months after I started patches, and watching him search for words and look like he had a concussion, speak
Mhm.
like he had a concussion. I'm going, oh my God, that's where I was 2 months ago. That's
Yeah.
exactly where I was 2 months ago. So like I could, and he said, actually, I'm speaking so much better in English. Like the long COVID hasn't damaged my English as much as my German.
Mm. Yeah. There's a different side of the brain usually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
between your first and your, additional languages. I think anybody who's dealing with long COVID should try this. I am not going to say it will work for everyone. I think there's 20% of people or so who try it don't have any effect.
Mhm.
Um, but if it helps you, it helps so much.
Mhm.
And it's something that'll, keep the reoccurring infections manageable. The second I'm around a possible exposure, I start patching. I've had 3 infections over the winter, and only the first one was bad, and I was totally broke, out of patches, out of nattokinase when I got sick. And I didn't get them for about a week. But, you know, I recovered. Took a lot longer that time. And then again in February, my kid brought it home, and I was sick for about a month then. And the third time he brought it home, I didn't get sick at all. I started patching right away. And the fourth time, neither of us, I did patch a couple days, not much, because neither of us tested positive. But then I started getting long COVID symptoms in my knees and like the random swelling. So I knew it. It felt like COVID. I knew it. It was like so mild, but it was,
Mhm.
you recognize it eventually. So
Yeah.
I'm patching again now, and I expect in another week or two I'll be back biking.